Hi friends, we're back with Nancy Drew, The Secret of the Old Clock by Carolyn Keene. Our chapter we're reading today is called A Desperate Situation, so let's get started. For a moment, Nancy stood frozen to the spot, positive that the man who was coming to the Topham cottage was one of the thieves. But she hesitated only an instant. Then she turned and ran back into the study. Too late, she realized that she'd trapped herself, for this room had no other door. Nancy started back toward the living room, but before she had taken half a dozen steps, she knew that escape had been cut off from the direction. The man who had reached the porch steps. "It won't do a bit of good to talk to him," she responded. "I'll hide, and when he leaves, I'll follow him in my car and report him to the police." Frantically, the young sleuth glanced about for a hiding place. A closet offered the only possible refuge. She scurried inside the closet and closed the door. Nancy was not a second too soon. She had scarcely shut the door when she heard the tread of the man's heavy shoes on the floor just outside, peeping cautiously through a tiny crack in the door. She saw the heavy-set man come into the study. His face wore a cruel expression, and he turned toward the closet where she huddled. Nancy hardly dared to breathe, lest her presence be detected. Apparently, the man noticed nothing amiss, because his eyes rested only casually on the door. Nancy's hiding place was anything but comfortable. It was dark and musty, and the old clothing hung from nails on the walls. A dust assailed her nostrils. She held a handkerchief to her face. "If I sneeze, he'll surely find me," she told herself. She felt around at once and came close to ripping her hand on a sharp nail. And then she came upon something soft on a shelf and imagined it was a sleeping cat. She drew back, then touched it more cautiously. "Only an old fur cap," she told herself in disgust. "Oh, now I feel like sneezing more than ever." She held one hand over her mouth, hard, and waited in agony. But presently the desire to sneeze passed, and Nancy breathed more freely. When she dared to peep out through the crack a second time, she saw that two other rough-looking men had come into the room. One was short and stout, and the other taller. And Nancy was sure that neither of these men was the caretaker, because Helen Corning had mentioned that the man was skinny. The heavy-set man who had come in first seemed to be the leader, for he proceeded to issue orders. "Get a move on," he growled. "We haven't got all day unless we want to be caught. That girl you saw, Jake, may be back any time from the shore, and she just might get snoopy." The man addressed as Jake scowled. "What's the matter with you, Sid? Going chicken? If that girl comes around, we'll just give her a smooth story and send her on her way." "Cut out the yakking," said Sid. "Parky, you and Jake take the desk out of here." There was no doubt now in Nancy's mind she was trapped by a clever gang of thieves. She could only continue to watch and listen helplessly from her hiding place. The two men lifted the heavy piece of furniture and started with it to the door, but they did not move swiftly enough to satisfy the leader, and he battered them savagely. Jake turned to him. "If you're in such a hurry, why don't you bring the van back to the driveway instead of leaving it hidden on the road in the woods, and have someone drive past here?" "See us?" sneered the leader. "Now get going." Little by little, the men stripped the room of everything valuable. Nancy was given no opportunity to escape. Sid remained in the room while the others made several trips to the van. "Well, I guess we have all the stuff that's worth anything now," Sid muttered. At last, he turned to follow his companions, who already had left the room, but in the doorway he paused for a final careful survey of the room. At the same moment, Nancy felt an uncontrollable urge to sneeze. She tried to muffle the sound, but to no avail. The thief wheeled about. "Hey, what?" Walking directly to the closet, he flung open the door. Instantly, he spotted Nancy and angrily jerked her out. "Spying on us, eh?" he snarled. Nancy faced the man defiantly. "I wasn't spying on anyone." "Then what are you doing in the closet?" the thief demanded, his eyes narrowing to slits. "I came to see the caretaker. Looking for him in a funny place, ain't you?" The man sneered. Nancy realized that she was in a desperate situation, but she steeled herself not to show any of the inward fears. "I must keep calm, she told herself firmly. Aloud, she explained coolly, I heard someone coming and I just felt a bit nervous. Well, you're going to be a lot more nervous, the man said threateningly. This will be the last time you'll ever stick your nose in business that doesn't concern you. A fresh wave of fright swept over Nancy, but resolutely she held on to her courage. You have no right to be here helping yourself to the Tophams' furniture, she retorted. You should be turned over to the police. Well, you'll never get the chance to do it. The ringleader laughed loudly. You'll wish you'd never come snooping around here. I'll give you the same treatment the caretaker got. The caretaker, Nancy gasped in horror. What have you done to him? You'll find out in good time. Nancy gave a sudden ale twist, darted past the man, and raced for the door. The thief gave a cry of rage and in one long leap overtook her. He caught Nancy roughly by the arm. Think you're smart, eh? He snarled. Well, I'm smarter. Nancy struggled to get away. She twisted and squirmed, kicked and clawed, but she was helpless in the vice-like grip of the powerful man. Let me go, Nancy cried, struggling harder. Let me go. Sid, ignoring her pleas, half dragged her across the room. Opening the closet door, he flung her inside. Nancy heard a key turn. Now you can spy all you want, Sid sneered, but to make sure nobody'll let you out, I'll take this key along. When Nancy could no longer hear the tramp of his heavy boots, she was sure Sid had left the house. For a moment, a feeling of great relief engulfed her, but the next instant Nancy's heart gave a leap as she heard the muffled roar of a van starting up in the distance. A horrifying realization gripped her. They've left me here to starve, she thought frantically. And that's the end of this chapter. So tomorrow we'll move on and we'll see if Nancy gets out of this closet, okay? Thank you for joining me. See you tomorrow. Bye, friends.